So I'm Rabbi Jessica Graf, joined here by Rabbi George Altshuler, my colleague here. And please join us up here, our wonderful invited guests tonight. I want to just... You'll have a chance to hear not only who these wonderful people are, but the incredible work that they've been doing in just a minute. First, I just want to welcome you here, and I want to thank so much the New Israel Fund for bringing this program to us tonight. And Shimrit, I don't know where Shimrit is. There she is in the back. Thank you for being a visionary leader in San Francisco and the United States and the whole wide world as you help us to open these conversations. I also want to thank all of our other partners who are here from other synagogues and other Jewish organizations in San Francisco. Please, if you're representing an organization or your clergy, please stand up for just a minute so everybody has a chance to say hello. I haven't seen everybody, so I can't name everybody. Cantor Marsha Addy. Great, I know we have more. There we go, Rabbi Noah Kushner. Wonderful, Rabbi Amanda Russell. And I saw some others. I know Rabbi Michael Lizak is here. Shar Zahav, wonderful, welcome. Rabbi Michael Lizak I saw, Rabbi Joel Jacobs I saw, and I apologize to anybody else who didn't stand up or I haven't said hello to yet. We're really lucky. I just want to read the list of co-sponsors. You all, as friends and partners in this endeavor, are very important to us, and we welcome you. This program is co-sponsored by The Kitchen, JCC SF, Congregation Emmanuel, Congregation Beth Shalom, and Shar Zahav. So this is really a community conversation. Just before we begin our official program, I want you to look up for 1 second into the most beautiful dome in the whole United States of America and the entire world. It is under, I'm a little biased, but it is under this dome that we engage in this dialogue tonight, a very sacred place, a very sacred space, and we're reminded that as we sit between our Moses window that gives us what I like to say is the true story of Moses receiving the 10 Commandments under Half Dome in Yosemite, over here. And our prophet window that reminds us how to live these words of Torah, how to take care of each other, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and shelter the homeless. We sit here in the middle and we are reminded that our work is sometimes hard. Our work is always, almost always wonderful. And our work falls between this incredible instruction that we have received as a community and the ways that we live and hug and fight with sometimes and negotiate with the wonderful people who are around us in our larger community. So that's what we do tonight too, as we hear this inspiring story of these visionary leaders who have begun to change the world, the Middle East, the world, and we pray that your work will just grow and grow and grow so that everybody will be a partner in the vision that you will bring us tonight. Thank you for being here. I'd like to invite Lisa Erdberg, who is one of our community's leaders and very involved with the New Israel Fund, also to welcome our guests.
Good evening. I just want to add my thanks to our co-sponsors, The Kitchen, Temple Emmanuel, Congregation Beth Shalom, and Shar Zahav and the JCC SF. My husband and I are longtime members of Congregation Sherith Israel, and we're also longtime supporters of the New Israel Fund. NIF enables us to support Israel in a way that aligns with our values. As a leading organization promoting democracy and equality in Israel, the New Israel Fund supports progressive social change by investing in Israeli NGOs that fight for civil and human rights, religious freedom, social justice, and Jewish-Arab shared society. And believe me, it is a fight. In the aftermath of October 7th, NIF launched its emergency safety net, to which many of you have generously donated. Stepping into the breach left by the Israeli government, NIF's emergency safety net funded and continues to fund local organizations providing humanitarian aid and basic needs, safeguarding human and civil rights, bolstering Jewish-Arab relations, and providing an alternative vision for the future. Among the grantees of the emergency safety net is an organization of profound personal importance to me, the Hostages and Missing Families Forum, an organization which is working ceaselessly to keep the return of the hostages front and center. I was gratified to learn that when the NIF board met in Israel last week, their first stop was at the headquarters of the families of the hostages to demonstrate solidarity and support. We must have a deal for the immediate safe return of all the hostages. These months have been challenging for both Israelis and Palestinians, but they've been exponentially challenging for those working in the shared society sphere. We're incredibly fortunate to have Sally Abed and Alon-Lee Green from NIF grantee Omdim Beyachad, Naqaf Ma'an, standing together with us this evening. Standing together is a beacon in this arena, representing both the struggle and the hope for the future I believe we all want to see. So now I'll turn it back to Rabbi Graf to tell you all a little bit more about our speakers and about standing together.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. So I'm going to formally introduce Sally and Alon-Lee, and then I have what I hope will be a fun activity for them to introduce each other. So Sally Abed is a staff member and an elected national leader of Omdim Beyachad Standing Together. In recent years, she has become a prominent progressive Palestinian voice in Israel. Sally is a recurring guest on the Promised Land podcast and the co-host of the new podcast Groundwork, a mini-series co-sponsored by the New Israel Fund about Palestinians and Jews refusing to accept the status quo and working together for change. And wonderfully, last week, Sally was elected to be a member of the municipality of the city of Haifa as the head of a new joint Arab list. So congratulations, Sally. Alon-Lee Green is the national director and a founder of Omdim Beyachad Standing Together, the Jewish-Arab grassroots movement that mobilizes people around issues of peace, equality, and social justice. He got to start organizing Israel's first trade union of waiters in a chain of coffee shops and went on to found Israel's first national waiters union. Alon-Lee emerged as a prominent leader of Israel's social protest movement in the summer of 2011 and subsequently served as a political advisor in the Knesset, Israel's parliament. So a little birdie who may or may not work for the NIF, the New Israel Fund, told me that in a past event you two had introduced each other because you work so closely together and know each other so well. So our first question for you is to introduce each other and to talk a little bit about why you both got into this work.
I started last time, you start now.
Wow, okay.
Twist.
Twist on a twist. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for being here with us and coming to listen to us. Before, telling you about Sally, I do want to take just, a second to acknowledge the reality that we're coming from. Before we talk about ourselves, before we talk about the movement, it is important to say that the war is still going on. The reality is still going down and down and down and deteriorating and becoming worse. And it's important for us to stress, first of all and before all, that we're here to do a lot of talking and a lot of work with the communities, the Palestinian community, the Jewish community, with elected officials in the US, but first of all, to progress and advance the support for a ceasefire agreement that will end a ceasefire agreement that will end the killing and the destruction in Gaza and that will bring back the hostages, all of them alive, back to their families. And it's important because this is why we're here and not in Israel right now. This work needs to be done, this agreement needs to be achieved. Sally Abed. Sally is a Palestinian citizen of Israel. She was born in the northern Palestinian village of Ma'ilya, which is right above, in the north of Israel, next to the Lebanese border. She was born to a Palestinian family that, like all other Palestinian families in Israel, was, trained as the society, the entire society of Palestinians in Israel, to be not political, to be just Arab-Israeli, but not connected to the Palestinianness and to the Palestinian background of the family. One of Sally's first political memories was where she had a Jewish friend in school, which is not something that is very regular, but Sally was dancing ballroom in a neighboring Jewish town. And Rita, right? It's Rita. Yes. Rita, her friend, came with her back home after the activity. And Sally grew up on all these stories of the Nakba, of her village, of her family, of bravery, of remaining on the land. And her grandmother was there, and she was very, she was very proud to have a Jewish friend. And she came to her grandmother and said, "Grandmother, can you tell Rita our stories about how we remained in Ma'ilya and how we remained on the land?" And her grandmother was really getting angry and said, "We don't tell these stories to Jews. It's not something we can do." And this is the kind of setting and environment Sally grew up in, not finding a space to be part of the society, but also being a Palestinian in the society. When she was, she went to high school and then she went to study here in the US in a small liberal art college in Indiana.
Love the details.
Yeah, I remember the details, so maybe. And then I think that was the first time you met other people that were, accepting you as who you are. You had people there from Gaza and from Ramallah and from East Jerusalem, and when they heard you're Palestinian citizens of Israel, they said, "Hey, another Palestinian, you're one of us." And that was the first moment that, someone told her, "You're also Palestinian." And then she got to be active with the entire community of students in the college around divesting from polluting industries. And she got to be active with Jewish students and LGBTQ students and black students. And she got to be part of something that was bigger than her story. And she felt that she has a space. But then she came back to Israel. She started working in a high-tech company in Tel Aviv. Yet again, not finding a space for her, not finding an ability to be who she is in the society. And one of the things that it was she described herself as Palestinian. She even once she said something casual about her Palestinian cuisine or Palestinian culture in the workplace, and she was called for a hearing just because of saying something too political in the workplace. At the same time that settlers came from the West Bank to the workplace with guns, but that wasn't political. Then in 2018 there was a struggle in Israel that Standing Together was very much involved in leading against the deportation of asylum seekers in Israel. We have around 40,000 African asylum seekers coming from Eritrea and Sudan. Those were people that were just dropped on the southern neighborhoods of Tel Aviv, and already neglected neighborhoods, the backyard of Tel Aviv, before even the refugees came. And all of a sudden, the government decided to say, the only problem of South Tel Aviv are the refugees, so we're going to deport them. And Standing Together created, with the veteran residents of South Tel Aviv, this struggle saying, no, Before even they came, we were neglected. We had crumbling houses. We have no infrastructures. We had no education that is well for our children. And now you're going to deport them just so you can deport us afterwards and build houses for rich people in Tel Aviv. And then we had this very powerful protest. And Sally saw this protest with the purple signs written both in Arabic and in Hebrew. The slogans, and she felt there's an invitation there, an invitation to be active in something that is even not connected to her. It's not about Palestinians, but it makes her feel that there's a place for her in the society to struggle for what kind of a society we have together. And then Sally joined the movement very quickly, becoming a prominent leader within the movement, becoming a national elected leader, and leading in the last month a Jewish-Palestinian list in Haifa to the city council, which was a huge success story. The only list that was not represented before that actually passed the threshold, representing young Palestinian and young Jewish people that are saying that this city is our city, we're all going to stay here, and it needs to be a city that is good for all of us. Sally led this list in a time of war, in a time of a racist wave, a wave of incitement against Palestinian citizens of Israel, but she got to be a Palestinian woman that is leading it with without compromising in the politics, and actually being very proud, and it worked. It really worked, and now Sally is a city council member.
I have to say the same details now. It's a competition. Thank you, Alon-Lee. Alon-Lee, right here, I love to tell his story because he is so humble and I love to brag about him. Alon-Lee was born and grew up in Tel Aviv. He has a twin brother, an identical twin brother. And he grew up with a single mom and their grandma. And the reason why I love to tell the story is also because it's very often that we see the dynamic of a Jewish and Palestinian as the absolute, the privileged and the underprivileged. And Alon-Lee here actually comes from a single mother family, and one of the very first memories that he had is being at school and the teacher coming to him in front of everyone and telling him that, unless you pay the fee, your mom has to pay the fee until the end of the day, otherwise you're not going to join the trip tomorrow morning to Eilat. And that's an experience that I never had, even though I'm a Palestinian. And that's really something that I think really shaped you. It really shaped Alon-Lee of the inequality, the out of control, sense of out of control of, I can't control my reality. I didn't choose this reality. I didn't choose to be where I am. And Alon-Lee also later in life discovered that he's a gay man, which was yet another struggle for him to really understand the otherness and understand the limitations of his privilege as a Jewish person living in Israel. And in high school, he was still in high school when he was working at a coffee shop chain, a large coffee shop chain, which really obviously took advantage of them. And as he always says it, the laws were just a recommendation. And when he asked for compensation for Shabbat, for transportation, for compensation for overtime, they told him, go to another place, go across the street and find another place. And of course, being Alon-Lee, he unionized the workers. And he was actually fired unlawfully, got him back to work from court's order. And they continued into a 6-week strike, which actually was successful in the CEO coming all the way from the US to build a new agreement that protected the rights of the 400 workers of that chain in Israel. So it was a huge, huge, huge success. And Alon-Lee was actually, that workers' union was the first workers' union in like 20 years created, which was a huge success at 18. So crazy. One of the things that happened there, it was the sense of control that you need to organize with people, and that even if you feel like your reality is unjust, it's not enough to just condemn it and say, no, this is not fair, but you actually have to change it, and that has to go through working with other people and organizing. The second thing that was there, it was at 2006, 2007, which was the post area of the Second Lebanese War, very, very, very tense area and times in Israeli society. A lot of racism towards the Arab-Palestinian community and a lot of tension. And with that, amongst the 5 people that led the union, one of the leaders was Nazir from Jaljulia, a Palestinian who got to lead hundreds and hundreds of people under the interest, despite the diversity and despite the tension and despite the differences of political affiliations within the workers within the union. And that was a very important lesson. How can we actually create leadership and politics, co-leadership that is based on interests? 2011 came, and there was the hugest social movement. And Alon-Lee, he always, he's part of it. He was one of 8 people, okay, that actually led what arguably is still the largest mobilization in Israeli history, the social movement in 2011, which was parallel to Occupy Wall Street here, to the Arab Spring. It started with the Arab Spring. Alon-Lee was really actually the main organizer of the big peak protest that had 500,000 people on the streets. In American proportions, that's like 23 million people on Times Square. It was the largest, per capita mobilized people in the whole wave of protests by then. But of course, Bibi Netanyahu back then was extremely, absolutely immune to the people's power and what they had to say and the people's demands. And he said, no, thank you. And what happened there is that you saw all this immense energy, immense historic energy just trickle down and just shatter and crash completely. And people went back to their houses without any vessels, any tools to actually absorb the energy and create sustainable work towards the future. It created a very, very heavy wave of despair in Israeli society. And, 4 years later, along other things that happened, a lot of different crises, and the 24, war on Gaza, that was up until then the deadliest group of people, including Alon-Lee, decided to create Standing Together out of these 2 main fundamentals, lessons. One, you need a political story that includes the majority of the people. We need a new political protagonist. When people ask, who's us? When we talk about politics, when we talk about our struggles, when we talk about our interests for peace, for ending the occupation, for equality, for social and climate justice, who's us? Who's fighting? Who's co-leading this? Who's the protagonist? And it needs to be a new majority, a Jewish Palestinian majority. That's the first lesson. The second lesson is that it's not enough to condemn and react to our reality. It's not enough to just mobilize people. We need to community organize, we need to build communities, we need to build leaderships, we need to build a social movement, a vessel that can tell this new story and can create sustainable power for change. And that really is what standing together. And we were so lucky. We were so lucky. And now I'm done with Alon-Lee, so you can give him an applause. We are so lucky to have had the movement on October 7th. We were so lucky to have our communities. We were so lucky to have the immunity, the capacity to navigate those complexities, the capacity to contain our grief and our fear together, the capacity, the organizational capacity to react immediately, de-escalate immediately, to actually create a proactive, positive message of partnership, of solidarity, of humanity immediately. That's what social movements do. And we believe wholeheartedly that only a social movement, which is not only, within standing together. We see standing together as kind of, the leader or the umbrella to a much bigger social movement that will create the culture, the terminology, the political imagination, the symbols, the communities that will enact that deep change, that will enact that shift in our politics and in the paradigm of how we view our society and how we view our future together. And that necessarily means that we both people are not going anywhere, and that we both people that live on the land have the right to be equal, to exist equally, and have the right for freedom. And as long as the Palestinian people are lacking the very basic right for freedom, for sovereignty, for dignity, we will never be able to achieve Jewish safety. And as long as the Jewish people are not safe on the land, we will also never be able to secure Palestinian safety.
So you've been doing your work for a long time. Standing Together has already been organizing for quite a long time. What's changed since October 7th? What is your focus now?
Okay. In recent years, Standing Together has really led many campaigns. Our main theory of change, our main strategy was how do we expand, how do we blur the lines of the automatic affiliations with the political parties and political camps, right? And we understood that we needed to build people's politics. We need to build politics that is relevant to people's lives. In recent years, one of the most prominent campaigns that we had is the livable wage campaign to raise the minimum wage. And who are the minimum wage earners in Israel? Palestinians, ultra-Orthodox, religious people, the peripheries, social and economic and geographical peripheries in Israel. And if you really view the base of these minimum wage earners and economic and social and geographic peripheries of Israel, you see that they actually have all of their interests quite aligned, almost perfectly. But they will never vote for the same party, and they will never even vote for the same camp, and they definitely will never be organized together or work around shared interests together. And that's what Standing Together was trying to do. Build a new majority through building unlikely alliances within the Israeli communities and Israeli society. After October 7th, we were about to launch our affordable housing campaign, which is still very important. And I will advance that in Haifa, and I'm sure many of us will advance that locally in our communities. Everything changed. Everything changed. Our hearts changed. I think, you know, when we really were thinking about, okay, how do we expand our base? Now we feel like we are fighting, obviously, the very, very urgent fight to stop the killing. We are witnessing one of the most horrifying human catastrophes of our centuries in front of our eyes right now. It feels like the Israeli public doesn't even have another option. It's being told that's the only option. Literally, if you really look at the political conversation and the political spectrum right now of leaders, of media, mainstream media, of opinion leaders, public figures, no one is giving a different option. Some of them might voice out, that's too much. Let's not talk about expelling or ethnically cleansing or, getting them out. Let's talk about voluntary immigration. But we understand that we need to give the Israeli public a new option, an alternative, a vision that is not based solely on solidarity, because that never works. Solidarity is very important. It's extremely important. But when you are traumatized, when you are scared, when you are being told over decades that military controlling millions of people is necessary for your safety, for the safety of your children, when you are told that starving when you're killing 35,000 people and starving hundreds of thousands of people and displacing 2 million people is necessary for your safety, then there's no space for moral lecturing. It doesn't work. You cannot condemn reality. You cannot shout the ugly truth in the faces of people. You cannot shout it in front of people who have their sons as soldiers going out. And I'm saying this as a Palestinian. I'm saying this not because I agree with the truth. I'm not saying this because I don't condemn the truth. I don't say this because I don't fundamentally disagree and I am threatened. My existence is threatened by the structure of the Israeli society as it is today. I am. I am saying this because I have taken upon myself among my people and within the movement not to condemn reality, we don't have that privilege, but to understand how to change it. And that includes and necessarily means that we have to build a people's peace movement. A people's peace movement. One that stems not only from solidarity and from moral values and fighting over the soul of our society, because it really feels like we're fighting over what kind of society we're going to be, but also understanding that Jewish safety, and I'm saying that, when I talk about it, I fully understand that Jewish safety has to go through Palestinian freedom and liberation. And the second thing, obviously, that also has to go through empowering the Palestinian narrative and the Palestinian leadership within Israeli society. That's imperative. You cannot co-lead a people's peace movement. You cannot build an equal leadership, a real movement, if one of the groups that is co-leading has been enduring marginalization and erasure for decades. You have to put it there. So you have we have to strengthen and empower ourselves as co-leaders, as two peoples, as two collectives, while also demanding our space as a new majority within the Israeli society. And that's the role that we have taken upon ourselves for the next, really, years.
Thank you.
Sally, you spoke about sort of a disconnect between the reality of what's going on in Gaza and where mainstream Israeli public opinion is. And I'm wondering how, and I know many of us have read articles about how the Israeli mainstream media is not showing images or many images of what's going on in Gaza. How do you enter the conversation when there is this disconnect that we see?
Just to give you a context, after October 7th, the Israeli public is still in a state of trauma. It's still in a state of fear. There are so many reasons to be afraid. You can get a phone call, and it can be the worst phone call you will get in your phone in your lifetime. You can live in the north or in the south and still have sirens and rockets that are flying above your heads. Some families still have their loved ones kept in Gaza, alive or unknown, just waiting for them to come back, to have a signal of life being sent to them. And this is the context of what the Israeli Jewish public at the moment experience and what the Israeli Jewish public see on the news right now. You get stories of soldiers and bravery. You get stories of the families. You get stories of what is going on internationally around the question of Gaza and Israel. But what you don't get is to see what's really going on in Gaza to the Palestinians. You don't get personal stories of families that lost 30 members of their family because of a bombing. You don't get stories of women giving birth without the means to give birth and losing their newborns. You don't get stories of the starvation of children. You don't get stories of people being displaced to the south of Gaza and not, being even imagined to come back to their homes because there's no home anymore. There's even not a neighborhood. Sometimes there's not even a city left. And when you get this big gap, this big dissonance of us getting the narrative, only the Israeli narrative told to us, and then there's a complete reality that is not covered, that is not told, it makes it really hard for us, honestly. It makes it really hard for us to try and expose or to talk about the reality, not as if we only tell the people in Israel. We also do, but only tell the people in Israel, the Jewish people, listen, we need to talk about what's going on in Gaza. Listen, we need to talk about what's going on with Palestinians in Gaza, not only because we care about them, but also because it's our life on the line here, our life that are intertwined with the realities and with the fate of the people in Gaza. But then, how do we do it without sounding crazy? How do we do it without sounding like we're morally lecturing people? How do we do it without sounding like we care more about the other and not about the traumas that we go through and that we endure? How do you bridge this gap between both realities existing at the same time? Think of it. Think of a person, a Palestinian, 21 years old, a lady that wakes up in the city of al-Fahim. It's a Palestinian city in Israel. She turns on her Instagram in the morning, and what she sees, is stories of the destruction in Gaza, of the starvation, of the killing, horrors, real horrors, and that is the experience and the reality for her. But 20 minutes from there can be a 21 years old Jewish lady waking up in the morning of the city, in the city of Kfar Saba. She turns on her Instagram and she sees the stories of families talking about their loved ones as hostages in Gaza, of soldiers dying and killed in the battles in Gaza. And that will be her experience. And both of these experiences, they exist on the same time. And the mission that Standing Together took upon itself is to try to, bridge this gap of experiences and say that in order to solve both of the problems, in order to solve both of the very tough existing, of lives of both people, we need to create a new story, to point on a solution that will be good for both people, for the Palestinians and for the Jewish people. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not a zero-sum game where if the Palestinians will somehow lose, we will win. We will also lose. And it's not if the Palestinians will win, I don't know, somehow they will be able to make the Jewish people lose and then they will survive on the land. No. We are interdependent at this point, like it or not. That's our existence. That is the reality. And trying to create a narrative of mutually benefiting from a solution, on pointing on the different reality that can be good to all the people that live on the land. A reality with no occupation, a reality with no military controlling millions of people, a reality of not moving from one war to the other, killing innocent people. It's not talked about, but even before October 7th, the West Bank in 2023 and 2022, one full year that was the deadliest year for Palestinians in the West Bank. Not because of Hamas, right? Hamas does not control the West Bank. But this is a reality that is bad for all of us. So trying to be able to, penetrate through this wall of not knowing is something that we take very seriously. And it is something that we are trying to do with really caring about our people, really caring about our society, really feeling the same feelings of our society, and also remembering one very basic rule about politics. You are not better than your society. You need to be part of your society and to change it from within, not, riding kilometers before the camp, before the society where you cannot be even seen anymore. It is very, very important to do that with the compassion and the empathy.
Yeah. I want to emphasize that. I think a lot of the time, the anti-occupation camp in Israel, the Jewish anti-occupation camp, has always been kind of like taking the moral high stand, right? Like we're the enlightened ones. Like what the basket of deplorables, the immorals that haven't seen the light yet. And it's really, I think what Standing Together is doing differently is insisting on being the mainstream, on insisting we're not the margins. We might be right now, but we don't want to be the margins. We don't want to be the outcasts. We don't want to be the radicals, the crazy ones, shouting things that are super cool and super radical and super righteous. We want to be part of society, and in order to actually lead society. And that's extremely important. And the second thing, you asked how, just insisting and persisting on putting these messages that are like so-called, conflicted, putting them together all the time, presenting them literally on stage in the rallies, literally in the same post, literally in the same video, literally in the same, op-ed that we write, everything, all the communication that we do. When we came here and we spoke about ceasefire, and we said ceasefire to stop the killing of, and destruction in Gaza, and to return the hostages. And people were like, what? How can you put these things together? They can't come together, right? It has to be, either ceasefire or bring them home. You can't have both together. And I think we audit ourselves to seemingly, put these different messaging and these different, I think the two camps, polarized camps, have monopolized certain words and certain conversations, and we have to persist and insist on putting them together, because they can exist together. They can only exist together if we really want a solution and not just a war of ideation.
So how well received is the work of standing together in Israel in general, and what is the response of the Palestinian community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite, the Palestinian community, I mean, it doesn't need convincing that, you know, the war should end, that they deserve equality, that their people deserve not to be, you know, collectively punished and starved and killed. The challenge with the Palestinian community is to mobilize them, is to get them out of the shell, get them out of the, you know, the very, very hard place that we exist in right now, the submission almost. You know, the very first couple of weeks, even months, were extremely hard, and still hard for the Palestinian society. There was a very, very high, heavy wave of persecution, of harassment, of threatenings. People got arrested, people got fired, people got expelled from university for saying things like, the kids in Gaza are innocent, you know, or having, you know, really very, very simple expressions of grief for humanity. So we are in a very difficult, depoliticized space right now, like a submission. So the challenge there is to give more safe spaces. And we do see an influx of mostly Palestinian youth who are coming and joining our campuses, because campuses are extremely hostile right now. And I do think that standing together is probably the only thing that's organized on campuses, you know, across the country, that are not only giving safe space, but that are empowering our students, both, by the way, you know, from all groups and communities. The Israeli public is obviously a different story. The Jewish Israeli public. It's a very isolating experience. I think Alon-Lee maybe can speak more about it as a you know, as a Jewish person who's trying to, you know, taking the patriotic stance and still being met with accusations of treason, and still insisting, like, no, this is the right thing to do. This is for us. I'm not doing this, you know, I'm not doing this only for the Palestinians. And it's been very difficult. At the very beginning, honestly, I'm not gonna beautify it. We got death threats, we still do. We had to evacuate our offices. Some of us had to, you know, relocate from our apartments. Very difficult. We felt unsafe at some point. There was many, still are tens of thousands of pieces of arms, of guns, you know, thrown out in our cities. And it's very difficult to protest and to be like, feel safe as, you know, people who have our opinion, as women, as Palestinians. It's very, very unsafe. I do think that we are pulling constantly with the Israeli public, and we do see certain improvements with certain things. And maybe that's an important point to have, that certain improvements in agreeing or, you know, receiving positively or at least neutrally our messaging is when things happen here in the US. When Joe Biden says Jewish safety is dependent on a Palestinian state, we are suddenly not so crazy. We are suddenly not overtone. And then people are like, maybe they're not so crazy. And then you see more people actually agreeing with our messaging. So there are, of course, always, you know, it's back and forth. We are battling. It's really a competition. You know, it's a competition that we have to win somehow. They're much more well-funded, but
I want to actually just add to that and give two small stories about the way that the Israeli public accept us, or the moments of hope also, next to all the challenges and isolation and sometimes, yes, feeling of being scared and lonely in what we do. So the story again of Sally and Haifa's majority, a purple Jewish Arab list in Haifa, running to elections to the city council of Haifa in the middle of all this craziness, the middle of all this incitement, but then seeing them in the last month, seeing them in the day of election, being able to mobilize hundreds of Jews and Palestinians together. They decided to stand outside of every ballot station in Haifa, convincing both Jewish and Palestinian voters to vote for something that is mutual, to vote for something that creates a shared story and talks about a majority of people that can benefit from removing the polluting industries from Haifa, because both Palestinians and Jews pay the same price for the air they breathe, because the air doesn't discriminate, right? If you're Jewish or Palestinian. And then being able to endure all their texts on Sally, all their texts on this list that are like pro-Palestinian, that are like backing Hamas or whatever lie people would want to see, and seeing voters, thousands of voters, also thousands of Jewish voters, deciding to go in the day of election and putting this ballot and getting Sally elected to city council, that's hope. Come on, that's real hope in our society. And it's important. It really is important. And another amazing thing is, the starvation in Gaza really managed to hit the news internationally. But it wasn't in Israel. It didn't. It just didn't. People are saying there's no starvation in Gaza. They have all the foods in the tunnels. If there is starvation, it's their problem. They voted Hamas, so what do you want? They let them starve. It's fake news and so on. And in the last 2 weeks, we decided to create a convoy, a food and aid convoy, coming from cities in Israel, leading all the way to the border in Gaza with the intention to try and pass this food to international aid organizations and to bring it to the people of Gaza and the Israeli hostages, because we understand that if the people of Gaza are hungry, we can assume that the Israeli hostages are also hungry there. And it was amazing to see that thousands of Israeli citizens in 5 different cities in Israel came to our offices and to our homes, to the places we collected food, and brought packages of food and flour and supplies. And it was amazing to see that even though it didn't hit the news, it became something that we were able to share and hit millions of views, exposures in social media, and people just said we're coming. And yes, last week we had 40 cars leading this convoy in one truck, and tomorrow we're having the second attempt to kind of break this barrier of hunger, of starvation, and to bring it to a public discussion which is accepted more widely than we would accept, and it is a moment of hope to see that the Israeli public is willing, a lot of them are willing to be in a position of saying, we're doing something, even though it's not popular, even though there's a price, we're there.
So, Alon-Lee, you were talking about in the example of the Haifa election, how you have, through standing together and through the political party, you have Jews and Palestinians working together. So I'd be curious to hear more about why that is so important, why it's so important to have Jews and Palestinians working together, and also some of the challenges that you face in this integrated organization.
Okay, I can say that 2 main reasons. One is, I will start from the easy one, the technical one. So maybe a bit of context, Israel is a mixed society. 80% of the citizens of Israel are Jewish citizens of Israel. 20% of the citizens are Palestinian citizens of Israel. And as a mixed society, we share a lot of spaces. We share sometimes cities, sometimes buildings, neighborhoods, workplaces, campuses. And also we share a political system. surprise, but you know, we all have the right to vote. We do know that Israel is heavily discriminating Palestinian citizens of Israel. We have laws such as the nation state law that was passed in 2018 that deteriorated, like put, you know, officially Palestinian citizens of Israel as at least second-class citizen, also revoking the status of the Arab language as a formal language of Israel. But even after that, Palestinians and Jews in Israel have the right to organize together, to vote together, to run for elections together. And we need to use this route, right? And also to understand that technically and profoundly, we will not have a majority to end the occupation, to bring about peace, to have social justice, to have climate justice, if we will not create a majority that is, you know, comprised of both Palestinians and Jewish citizens. The right wing in Israel is trying for years to delegitimize the Palestinian leaders and the Palestinian representative in the Knesset, because they understand that if they will make will make it illegal for some Palestinians with some position to not be able to run for power, or B, they will be able to make Palestinian young voters or older voters to just give up and say, you know, the political system is not for us. They will secure a forever majority for the right wing in Israel, because the Palestinians will be out of the game, and among the Jewish society, they will secure a majority. So it is important technically to secure our majority by organizing together. But more than that, our existence, our realities in Israel, in our society, cannot be separated anymore. Some people have fantasies that somehow, you know, Palestinians will be expelled or disappear from the land. Some other people have a fantasy that somehow Jews are going to disappear from the land. How many times I got this, this saying, go back to Poland, in Twitter, not from Israelis. And by the way, I'm not even from Poland. But it's not going to happen. Sorry, it's a wild theoretical fantasy, but the reality is that people are going to remain. And in reality, we share the reality in such a deep way. When we are exploited in the workplaces, it happens to both Palestinians and Jews together. When we are facing, economical crisis, it happens to both Jews and Palestinians together. But not only in the social or the climate or the economic issues, also when you get to the question of the occupation and the question of the violent reality on this land, we share this reality together. What happens to the Palestinians influences the Jewish safety in Israel. What happens to the Israelis, it influences the Palestinians. And we need to understand that the only possible way to change this reality is to somehow organize our society in a manner that takes in account all the experiences of the people and doesn't leave one big chunk of society behind and say, your life doesn't matter. So it is important for us to try and create this narrative of building a new majority in the Israeli society, a majority of people that understand that our interests can be shared, but not only that, a majority that understand that there is a small minority in society that holds a lot of power, that benefits from reality exactly as it is today, that wants the status quo to stay. They make money out of the occupation and the war. They preserve their political power in parliament and in the Knesset. They preserve their settlements in the West Bank and the control over the occupied territories. And we recognize this minority, but we organize and we try and build a majority by organizing the majority of both Palestinians and Jews.
So what can we in America do to be part of this extraordinary vision that you have? How can we impact change?
Okay. I'll say things and you continue what I missed. I think the first message, especially, I'm guessing I'm speaking here to predominantly like Jewish diaspora, right? And I think one of the messages here needs to be, I think a lot of the times it is expected the main expectation is for you to preserve the interest of Israel, right? As the refuge for the Jewish people. And I think we're in urgent need to disconnect the Israeli government from its people. And you need to preserve the interests of the Jewish people on the land, which are actually in direct conflict with the Israeli government and the leadership. So that's one thing I think it's important to say and really resonate. I do think that I also see a lot of, there's a fragmentation, there's this big a break right now between, the left, within the left, the liberal democratic camp in the US, which is not only endangering you guys, which is frightening, with the upcoming elections, it's also endangering us. And I think maybe to the younger people in the crowd here, get out of your Twitter war and actually try to talk to people. I'm not saying this judgmentally. What I'm asking you is very hard. I'm not saying this judgmentally. I know everyone here cares. It's the hardest thing to do, to actually go out and let go of the anger and the righteousness and what you think is absolutely something that you cannot compromise on right now, and ask yourself, is this one thing, what is absolutely necessary for our immediate goals? And usually the answer is no. That those fundamental disagreements that are created, which are very real, I'm not dismissing them, yeah, they can be really real. Are they really what's preventing us from reaching a joint solution for the immediate needs that we need right now? And I don't think that we will find that. And I think you should acknowledge the distance that you have, and therefore the privilege that you have, and therefore the responsibility you have to relinquish the need to be that righteous about these things and actually, ask what is the change that we need, what is our shared goal right now, who do we need to convince, and who's our ally? And we will see that we are much, much, much bigger than you are right now, fragmented. And I think you need to get out and talk to your communities to do that. And it's not an easy thing to do. And the third thing is take your politics seriously here. Organize and impact your politics here. And we already mentioned it. It impacts our politics. What the leaders here say and do deeply impact our space and the spectrum of messaging that we can use with the Israeli public. They are in tune to what is happening here. So take it seriously if you really want to take seriously what's happening back home, because what you do here matters. And I think it should be the messaging about, no blank check for the Israeli government and the extremist messianics, lunatics who are leading us to I don't know, even nowhere. That's one message that needs to be very, very clear. That we need a ceasefire agreement. We need a leadership that loves the people, loves the land. You cannot be patriotic. You cannot love a country, a land, if you destroy its people, no matter who those people are. You cannot. And the last thing is, as we always say, and I feel like we're being repetitive, but that's okay. We need not only a ceasefire, we need a permanent ceasefire, and we need peace. We need peace. We need Palestinian freedom, Jewish safety, and Israeli-Palestinian peace. And that's something that you need to organize around for the leadership to say around, so we can also say it back home in a much more impactful way.
I will just add one thing that is maybe obvious, but it's important for us, and I will say why it's important. Financial support. We need big money when we come back to Israel. I'm sorry to be so blunt, I'm sorry, but coming from Israel and seeing the fact that the right wing in Israel have billboards that are saying, occupy, expel, resettle. They have billboards that are trying to convince the Israeli public that there is only one option in the menu, and this option is eternal war. We need to be able to put up a fight to them. We need to be able to have the means that they have in order to make the Israeli public understand that there's another option on the menu, and people would be able to choose this option. Without putting this fight, the Israeli political system is so out of balance, and it's just leaning to the right wing. We need to be able to put a weight on the left side of the Israeli politics and talk about Israeli-Palestinian peace, about ending the occupation, about having this option of, an agreement, a resolution, a solution as the patriotic thing for the Israeli people, not out of solidarity only, but also as the self-interest. And for that, we really need the means. And that's also the reason we came to the US, and I hope it's appealing to you, but it's really, really important for us. Thank you.
I wish the two of you were running for president of the United States. You'd have my vote, no problem. I want to invite Shimrit Braun Kamin to come up here to the bima. As she's coming, I'd like to say that this is the third in a series that we've called In Focus Israel Gaza. We've had two speakers. Rabbi Jill Jacobs was our first, and she's here in this room tonight. Peter Beinart was our second. Both of those conversations that Rabbi Altshuler and I had with those thinkers, leaders, visionaries have been recorded and are available on our website if you're interested in hearing the first two in this series. Number 4 will take place on Sunday, this coming Sunday, by Zoom from 10:30 to 11:45 with Avital Leibovich, who is the Jerusalem Bureau Chief, Office Director for the American Jewish Committee. And she will be calling us from Jerusalem and talking about what's going on there. So please join us if you are interested in continuing these conversations. When we set about with this series, we said that the purpose of this was to open discussion. And we didn't know, or we hoped that it would be the case that people who listened would sometimes maybe vehemently disagree with some of the things that they heard, or agree, or hear brand new ideas that they had never heard before. And that was the idea behind this series, was that you'll go home, go outside, go out in the world, open your mind, as we heard, and continue this conversation everywhere that you go, on the bus and at the breakfast table and everywhere else, because we heard some ideas tonight which are extraordinary and very much worthy of continuing the conversation. Shimrit.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Rabbi.
both so much.
Thank you so much, Alon-Lee and Sally. Let's give another round of applause to their amazing work, really. So, and I think we heard you say how much loneliness there is in this work, for you to do this work for peace and equality, and as a joint organization in Israel. So I just wanted to look around you and just see how many people came to support you today and see you and listen to you. You're really not alone. We are your community, and really appreciate you being here. And thank you so much, Rabbi Jessica and Rabbi George and Congregation Sherith Israel and all of your staff. I can't tell you how much we are grateful for your continued support and partnership with the New Israel Fund. It means so much to us, and really appreciate you hosting this program. It's amazing. Thank you. And special thanks to all the incredible co-sponsors of this event, The Kitchen, and the JCC of San Francisco, and Congregation Emmanuel, Congregation Beth Shalom, and Shar Zahav. It's a true community effort that brought us together, and we are very grateful for each and every one of you for partnering with us. And thanks to all of you for coming here. It's really heartwarming to see all of you sitting here and listen to such an interesting and nuanced conversation during these difficult times. We can't tell you how much we appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
For those who don't know me, my name is Shimrit Braun Kamin. I'm the Associate Director of the New Israel Fund here in the Bay Area. And as many of you know, and I have worked for the past 45 years to support social justice and equality and democracy and civil society in Israel. And I really feel lucky to be a part of NIF during these difficult times because the incredible work of our staff and grantees on the ground, it makes a huge difference. And I can tell you, I came back from Israel a month ago. I went to visit my family. I have close family members who've been affected from the attack. And it was very, as you heard from Alon-Lee and Sally, and as you probably heard, it's not easy to be in Israel right now. And the atmosphere is very heavy and very complicated and difficult. And I have to tell you that the first time I felt hopeful during this visit was going for a rally for peace that Standing Together organized. It was such a breath of fresh air to see Jews and Arabs, not hundreds, like more than 2,000 of them marching in the streets of Tel Aviv together, and both Jewish and Arab speakers. And it really helped me get back here more hopeful and more energized to keep doing this work. And before you leave, I want to thank all of the incredible New Israel Fund supporters here in the crowd. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate your support. It helps us keep supporting the incredible work of Standing Together and many other organizations working tirelessly. This year has been crazy, from shifting in one day from this huge struggle for Israel's democracy to deal with the crisis of October 7. In supporting the families of the hostages and marginalized communities like the Bedouins in the Negev, and to protect freedom of speech and freedom of movement of Palestinian citizens of Israel, and so many other issues that we touched, all of them, and parallel keep working for the vision of a better Israel that we all deserve and believe in, and support equality, justice, and peace for long term. And also, we are heavily invested in the work of shared society that we believe is one of the most important key in the future of Israel, we believe. And we are also planning to invest not just in shared society, but as Sally mentioned, also in Palestinian society organizations in Israel, because we know that if we don't have strong Israeli-Palestinian society, we won't be able to nurture a change, and it's also very important to invest in it. And really, last note before you leave, as you all know, our Guardian of Democracy was planned to be on October 15 of 2023. And we had to postpone it, of course. And we are now rescheduling this gathering in the highlight of the work for a shared future. And it's going to happen on April 14 at the JCC of San Francisco, that we are so excited that they are hosting us and giving us the space and the partnership. And we are going to feature the Galanter Prize winner of this year, Shir Nosatsky, that worked to bring the Jewish-Arab partnership before October 7 into the main protest movement. And since October 7, to work in humanitarian aid and joint work towards humanitarian aid for Palestinians and Jews. And we have Sandy and Linda Galanter sitting here, and we're closing circles as Alon-Lee and Rula, the co-director of Standing Together, were last year's winners of the Galanter Prize. And we really hope that you will all join us. And thank you, Sandy and Linda, for this. Just another speaker that we're going to have is Dr. Yasmin Abu Frecha. She's an NIF board member, is also a doctor, and she's manifesting how taking care of health for everyone play a role in shared humanity and a change. And she works in Beersheba at the Hospital of Soroka. She was working there during October 7 and after, so it's going to be very fascinating to hear her. If you're interested to attend, we have our wonderful staff people, Becky over there, and that will give you postcards with a QR code that you can scan and see more details. We hope to see you there. So thank you again, Jessica and George and Sherith and Sally and Alon-Lee and Laila Tov. Thank you.